Next up, I'm going to talk about some of the differences between squids and octopuses. 'Cause they obviously look pretty similar. They both have like tentacles and they're both mollusks and stuff like that, but there are some very key differences between them. First of all, squids tend to be more pelagic. They're mostly hanging out like in the water column, whereas octopi are usually more benthic. They're often hanging out more on the bottom. There are some more pelagic octopuses, but most of them are they like to hang out on like rocky reefs and stuff like that. Uh, Squids have 8 arms and 2 tentacles. So these are arms, and then the long, thin ones with like the little, like kind of the little, like almost looks like a little hand at the end. That is a tentacle. Whereas octopi just have 8 arms. In a squid, you actually do have like kind of the remnants of a shell. So the shell has been modified into what we call the pen. Because I forget if we get to dissect a squid in this class, but when you dissect a squid, it does feel like a little pen inside the squid. Like there's just a little plastic pen on the inside, or like maybe like a quill. Uh, and so that's what's the left of the shell in a squid. In an octopus, there is no shell at all. There's no hard, the only hard piece of an octopus is its beak. The squid has 2 triangular fins on the side. That's part of what makes it kind of a better swimmer, is it's got those fins that it can flap and use to steer a little better, whereas the octopus does not have fins. So that's kind of some of the differences between these two groups. So another interesting characteristic of phylum of the cephalopods. Not all of them have this, but most of them do. They are semiparous. What that means is it is a trait of species where they reproduce one time and then they die. So obviously us, we can reproduce many times, and it's not, we may or may not die afterwards. We'll die afterwards at some point, but it's not necessarily related. Whereas things like salmon are also semiparous. So you may know that they swim up rivers to go reproduce in like their native like little stream that they were born in, and then as soon as they lay their eggs, they die. These guys are similar. They lay their eggs, and then the male dies pretty soon after, but the female often stays alive for a little while, guarding the eggs. So she'll guard the eggs, she'll waft water over them to make sure they're oxygenated, she'll protect them from predators. Um, but then usually during this entire time period, she doesn't eat at all. And so basically, she kind of slowly starves to death while waiting for her eggs to hatch. When the eggs do hatch, I think they're incredibly cute. This is a little baby octopus. They're often part of the plankton for a while before they get big enough to become nekton, to start being able to swim against a current. But yeah, I just think that baby octopus are very, very cute. There's one time I was on the ship and we would pull trawl nets, and there's one where we must have just run through a cloud of baby octopi because we're trying to like count stuff, and they're like crawling out of the bucket, they're crawling all over the place. We kept like grabbing them and putting them back in the bucket because mostly we don't want to lose them so they don't die, right? Because if they just like crawl out or like in the corner of the ship, they're gonna dehydrate and die. So we're kind of like trying to keep them in the bucket so we could throw them back in to sea, and it was just very funny time to see all these little baby octopi just like crawling all over the place. So my really cool example here is the octopus. I love octopuses. They're so cool. They're cool for many reasons. First off, camouflage. They're insanely good at it. So they can change both the color and the texture of their bodies. So you can see like this guy, he's changing not, or this person is this, I don't know what sex this octopus is. It is changing both the color and the texture to blend in with these rocks. So it's imitating kind of that algae texture of the rocks. They're also very flexible because, like I said, the only hard part of their body is their beak, that little hard biting structure they use to eat. The rest of their body is all soft because, again, they don't have any shell, right? So that means an octopus can squeeze its body through any space that's as big as its beak. So they're also like very good at squeezing into tiny places. When it comes to aquariums, that also makes them like escape artists as well. You have to make sure like an octopus's tank is really well sealed and that they're not able to like get into the pipes or anything like that because again, they can squeeze into these like really narrow spaces. Another thing that's cool about octopi is that they are super smart. They are able to do a lot of different behaviors, but two examples that I love. First, they're able to do observational learning. What that means is that you can learn how to do something by watching someone else do it. And that's actually something a lot of animals are not able to do. They can only learn by like doing it themselves. So, for example, the test they did for this was they had two octopi in like two tanks, and they kind of put a wall up between them so they couldn't see each other. And they took one octopus and they gave it a crab in a jar. And octopi, oh, there goes my video again. Octopi love to eat crabs. That is one of their favorite foods. Wow, this video does not want to come back. I don't know why my computer's being so finicky today. There we go. Oh my gosh. Okay, you know what? You're just gonna have to imagine my gestures. Okay, so put a crab in like a little jar with a twisty top. So something like a pickle jar, essentially. And the octopus, sees the crab in the jar and it's like, ooh, crab. And it's like turning all these colors and it's like putting its arms all over the jar. It's like, oh, I can't get at the crab. I can't get the crab. And then, basically by, coincidence, eventually manages with its suckers and everything to unscrew the jar. And then it's like, aha, now I can get the crab. And, grabs the crab and eats the crab. And they're like, okay, so it's got it now. So they put a jar with a crab again into the same octopus's tank, and right away it's like, okay, now I know how to do this. It unscrews the lid of the jar and gets the crab out. But then they remove the wall so that now the octopi, they're still in separate tanks, but they can see each other. And they drop two jars, each with a crab, into each of their octopus's tanks. And of course, the first octopus, no problem, like just grabs the jar, unscrews the lid, gets the crab. The other octopus watches that octopus do that and instantly unscrews the jar, gets the crab out, eats the crab. So again, it learned by watching the other octopus, which is especially impressive considering that octopi uh, are not like very social animals. They're usually not that social with each other, at least. There is some evidence that they actually might like hanging out with other species. Like they can be very curious about divers and like to like explore divers. And it seems like sometimes they also kind of enjoy spending time with fish. Um, but they don't tend to be that social with each other, other than like breeding, of course. The other example of octopi being very, very smart, although how much this is on purpose is up for debate, but I believe it was at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They had this octopus in one tank, and they had a crab tank across from it, and they started noticing the crabs were disappearing. And so, they'd come in every morning and they'd be like, "Oh man, like there's some more crabs missing," and they're like, "Are they eating each other?" Because sometimes crabs can be cannibals. So they were like, "Are they eating each other? No, it doesn't seem like they're eating each other. Are they escaping? No, it doesn't seem like they're escaping." So they actually set up a camera to film overnight. And the camera films this octopus managing to escape its tank, goes over to the crab tank, because a lot of them can like survive out of water for like a little while, goes over to the crab tank, eats a couple crabs, and then goes back into its own tank before like morning when the people come. So they had to, of course, like modify its tanks that could no longer escape. But yeah, octopi, very cool, very smart animals. So the last group we're going to talk about in phylum Mollusca is class Polyplacophora. That stands for like many shells or many plates, essentially. So these guys, they have that muscular foot, but instead of like one coiled shell, they have these 8 overlapping plates that make up their shell. And these are the chitons. So we may also get to see these guys in the rocky intertidal. Sometimes you'll get to see them there. So they have those internal organs, but they are not coiled, unlike something like a snail. All right, so that is it for this lecture. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about all my special interest groups of animals. And I will see you all on Friday. Have a great week.